We've all been there. You meet a very interesting person and feel as though you need to impress them. This can be for a variety of different reasons, but most of us have probably done some stupid things to impress others at some point in our lives. Whether this involves hanging from a super high ledge or trying one of social media's most recent so-called challenges, impressive stunts can often be very dangerous. Today, we will be taking a look at 10 times when people risked everything to impress others. But before we get started, be sure to click that like button and notification bell or your next impressive stunt may end in disaster.
Oh, look at that. Hey, yo!
You're sick.
You see what happened to him?
Number 10. It's not uncommon to have a fear of heights. Some people develop this fear as a result of childhood trauma, though others are born with it and live their entire lives avoiding high places. This was not true for Felix Pettit, a stuntman who loved performing stunts from very high positions. The 1970s were a very pivotal time in America. The political and social climate was changing dramatically, and the world was gradually becoming a very different place. This transition gave birth to some rather risky celebrities and entertainers, and Felix Pettit was both. Felix was a well-known stuntman who pushed the limits of what people believed was possible and performed some of the most dangerous stunts the world has ever seen. Back in August of 1974, Felix had the idea to run a narrow string of rope between the Twin World Trade Towers in New York. At the time, the Twin Towers had just recently been constructed and were the two most popular buildings in all of New York. To cash in from the building's fame, Felix scheduled his next stunt atop the two buildings. He made his way to the top of the buildings where he began to walk across the thin wire that had been carefully placed by his associates. As he walked across, he began to dance and strut around as if unfazed by the incredible distance between himself and the hard pavement below. He continued to goof off on the wire for around 45 minutes before he made his way to the other side. The stunt earned Felix worldwide recognition for his bravery, or stupidity, and he became the topic of a documentary that was released many years later in 2008, known as Man on Wire. Number 9. Karl Wallenda became a household name in the 1970s for the same reason as previously mentioned Felix Pettit. Karl and several members of his family were well-known tightrope walkers who had made a name for themselves by performing extremely dangerous stunts across the world. Karl had become quite confident in his ability to walk a rope and decided to perform one of the biggest stunts yet in 1978. He strung a rope between two popular hotels in San Juan, Puerto Rico. While this wasn't his most risky stunt ever, it was one of his most ambitious attempts, as the weather conditions that day were less than ideal. The 73-year-old performer gradually made his way out onto the rope. Everything was going according to plan, but the weather got the better of him about midway through his performance. A strong gust of wind blew in, catching Karl completely off guard. He stumbled for a brief moment before he lost his footing and plummeted to the ground below. This was the end of both Karl's career and his life. However, Karl's grandson was not going to let his grandfather's legacy die. Nick Wallenda is a modern-day tightrope walker, with his most popular stunt taking place in 2012 when he became the first person in the world to tightrope across Niagara Falls. He is still an active performer today and has since tightroped across a large gorge near the Grand Canyon. Even though Karl Wallenda may have tragically lost his life, his passion for the sport had certainly been passed down to his grandson. Nick is doing everything he can to keep his grandfather's dream alive, and he's doing a great job. Number 8. Evel Knievel is one of the most well-known stuntmen in the world. He has performed countless dangerous stunts throughout his life and has claimed his place as one of the most impressive stunt drivers to have ever lived.
How much NOS did you put in the tanks?
Enough to shame the space shuttle. Chief, go ahead.
Many of his stunts revolved around his motorcycle, which he would jump across large canyons, trucks, rivers, and more. This is true for one of his most popular stunts that took place in 1974. Knievel and his team developed a jet-powered motorcycle and planned to jump the bike over the Utah Snake River Canyon. The event became quite popular and virtually everyone in America knew about the stunt. He made his way to the canyon, took a seat in his vehicle, and began the jump. However, shortly after he left the ground, his parachute prematurely deployed, sending his bike crashing into the earth below, with Evel making a somewhat painless landing a short distance away. It is rumored that this premature parachute launch likely saved Evel's life. Otherwise, he would have most likely crashed to the ground along with his bike. Even though the stunt was technically a failure, Evil managed to walk away with his life, which is a success story. Number 7. Back in 2012, Red Bull sponsored one of the most recognizable stunts of our generation, when a man known as Felix Baumgartner became the first and only skydiver to break the speed of sound. Felix boarded a space capsule and traveled several miles above the Earth. He then jumped from the capsule, headed toward the big blue planet below him. He plummeted through the air for 24 miles and eventually landed in Roswell, New Mexico just 9 minutes later. The mission was a success, and everyone involved with the team was extremely happy that the jump went as planned. Though this could have ended in disaster for Felix quite easily, as the heat generated by the fall could have quickly caused his spacesuit to erupt in flames without warning. Luckily, he made it out alive, but don't try this at home. Number 6. Evel Knievel isn't the only man to find himself fascinated by the idea of jumping motorcycles across unbelievable distances. Robbie Madison decided to do the same in 2009 when he made plans to fly his bike across a 120-foot gap and land on the 96-foot-high arch of the Paris-Las Vegas Hotel. He managed to perform the jump successfully but sliced his hand open in the process, requiring 10 stitches to seal the wound. Number 5. Mad Mike Hughes is the nickname given to a man who had proven to be one of the most daring men to ever live. He created a rocket that was powered by the same technology Evel Knievel used in his infamous failed Snake River jump. Mad Mike's rocket was powerful enough to send him soaring 1,374 feet into the air, across the Arizona desert. The stunt was, almost miraculously, a success. When he made it back to land, he staggered out of the vehicle, clearly disoriented, and was very satisfied with the success of his stunt. Number 4. Dean Potter is a man who was one of the sport's most critically acclaimed jumpers. Dean was always obsessed with the safety of his stunts and made sure that his life was never truly in danger at any time during his many performances. However, when he was 43 years old, Dean attempted to leap from Yosemite National Park's Taft Point. An avid base jumper, Dean was quite confident in his abilities. However, catastrophe struck, and Dean, alongside his friend Graham Hunt, both plummeted to the ground below and lost their lives. Base jumping is technically illegal in Yosemite Park, and it is easy to understand why. Number 3. Johnny Strange became the world's youngest person to make it to the top of a mountain on all 7 continents when he was just 17 years old. He earned a name for himself performing all sorts of dangerous stunts, but these stunts ultimately led to his downfall when he was 23 years old. He was filming a video for a new wingsuit when he miscalculated as a result of difficult weather and crashed into a mountain in the Swiss Alps. He lost his life immediately. He had posted to social media the day before and commented on the unpredictable weather, but decided to proceed with the stunt anyway. Number 2. Paul Steiner is one of the world's most daring individuals by far. In 2010, he teamed up with Red Bull to perform one of the most dangerous stunts the world has ever seen. Paul had made plans to fly to Austria, hiring 2 pilots to help him with his stunt. He planned to exit a glider plane while it was flying mid-air and make his way to another plane that was flying below it. The planes were flying at speeds of over 100 miles per hour when he leaped from the first plane onto the wing of the second plane. He then grabbed the tail of the first plane and stabilized himself. He then made his way back to the ground with a parachute. The stunt was a complete success, though we have to ask ourselves what purpose it served. Number 1. Elaine Robert calls himself an urban climber, as he takes pride in climbing some of the world's tallest and most dangerous buildings and inclines. Many of his climbs are performed without any sort of safety restraints. He simply makes his way to the building and begins climbing without ever securing a rope or cord. Many of his climbs are done without giving prior notice to residents, and some have even been conducted illegally. He has many dangerous and impressive stunts under his belt, but none compare to the performance he had on Christmas Day in 2004. Elaine made his way to Taiwan's tallest building and began to climb up the side. It took him a total of 4 hours to make his way to the top of the building, though he stopped along the way for a brief moment to chat with the Taiwan president. It doesn't seem as though Elaine got himself in any trouble for this climb, though that isn't true for many of his previous attempts, which landed him in hot water with local governments. Elaine eventually made it to the top of the building and claimed his title as the first person to scale Taipei's 101 building.